opportunity. Hopefully, you can hear me better now. Again, thank you for joining Reaching New Heights with Troy Bell, the city manager, City of Muskegon Heights, where you get to know what you need to know so you'll be in the know. Thanks for all the comments in between shows. Sorry that I missed you last week. So I hope that you didn't miss me too much, but I certainly missed having the opportunity to connect with the community last week. So excited to be back here again. And thanks, as always, to the mayor and city council for the opportunity for me to serve in this position. And thanks to you, the community, for allowing me the honor and the privilege to serve as your city manager. So, some exciting things that we want to talk about today in today's show. We're going to cover a brief overview of the hotly talked about American Rescue Plan Act and what's going on with that process. So, an update on that. We want to also, and this is something that we could not get into our last show, so we had to end early because of all the great information that we had and the guests that we had on the show. But we want to get back to a conversation about the roads and field any questions about that. And that's been another hot topic around town. So I want to make sure that the community, if you have questions, that you can ask questions and I can provide you some additional facts and overview to help explain where we are and where we're going with road projects. And then also, we want to do a general update on some of the exciting things that are happening or about to happen, updates on those things. So, um, three big topics: American Rescue Plan, roads, and then a general update on things that are happening around town. So, actually, I'd like to start with opening up the conversation or throwing the question out there about roads. So we've had some guests that have come on in the last few weeks. We had an engineering firm, we had the public works director, all to talk about where we are with roads in Muskegon Heights. And I understand people are upset and angry, and I don't blame them for being upset and angry. And I share in some of the pain with the damage to my vehicle, the $2,000 worth of front end work that I had to have. And so I know that story is just a small piece of some of the frustration and difficulty that members of our community, residents, stakeholders, businesses are dealing with. And just to reiterate some of the conversations that we've had in the past, where we are with our roads is a 25 to 30-year-old problem that has gone unaddressed over the years. And I wasn't here, obviously, until two and a half, almost 3 years ago. But so I can't speak to what were the priorities and decisions that were made around how to allocate resources and funds to address those types of situations. All I can say is, in review of where we are now, we're in a situation where we could have used um, uh, 30 years of better maintenance on the roads. And when the engineering firm was here, we got a chance to talk about what better maintenance is all about. That's um, crack sealing. Anytime cracks come about in the roads, and that's part of a natural process of any roads. You drive anywhere in the state of Michigan, and you're going to see some of the same evidence. And so what we're dealing with here in Muskegon Heights, although it's acute and more severe, you're going to find semblances of that in almost every community across the state of Michigan. But the difference is that when you have an investment in your roads and you maintain them, when cracks occur, you get on them right away, you seal them. And you patch them. When you have potholes, you patch those potholes right away so that that doesn't end up in a catastrophic failure where the potholes get all the way down into the sub base of the road and then begin to deteriorate the sub base of the road. And so, again, looking at the condition of the roads in Muskegon Heights, and there's a PACER rating that is used statewide, nationally, to rate roads based on a scale of 1 to 10. We talked about that. The majority of the roads in the city of Muskegon Heights are 1 on a scale of 1 to 10, which means that they are in the state where they need full reconstruction. And so when we get into potholes where water gets down to the sub base, and over the winter it freezes, it thaws, it freezes, it thaws. Every time it freezes, it expands and breaks the structure of the road. And when we get to that case, and the majority or a significant portion of the roads, in order to fix that, you can't just put a Band-Aid on it, which is basically patching it. You have to go in and you have to reconstruct the entire road. And so I was told that we haven't had a full reconstruction of a road in many, many years. Some say 25, some say longer than that. But that's where we are, and trying to address that. So based on the costs that we've seen thus far, in the small road projects that we've been able to do, and extrapolating those costs out over the entire 60 miles of roadway in Muskegon Heights, in order to bring the roads to the condition that they should be in, that would be $110 million an estimate. And that's a round estimate based on today's pricing that doesn't take into account increases in inflation. And we all know that we've been hit with inflation. Hopefully it's temporary, but we don't know how long that's going to last. But without accounting for inflation, we're looking at a $110 million solution. And that's quite significant. If you can imagine, when you consider that our annual budget in Muskegon Heights, and that's the general fund, the amount of revenue and expenditures in Muskegon Heights is approximately $9 million a year. So even if we use the entire budget, all $9 million every year for the next 10 years, that would only get us $90 million worth of road work. 11 years, of course, 99. And so that would be using the entire budget in order to address that. And that would be a 10, 11, 12-year solution in order to address the roads in Muskegon Heights. So that's just a way of giving you an idea of the scope of the issue in terms of the need to reconstruct a road. So the most recent project that was completed was Delano. And that was, from what I'm told, the first full reconstruction that we've done in Muskegon Heights. And so when you do a reconstruction, that's when you tear up the entire road, you tear up the sub base of the road, you lay down a new foundation of dirt and rock. You compact that on layer on top of layer until you get a certain density of the compaction. And then you come back and you put the paving over top of that. Also, as part of a full reconstruction is something that you'll notice if you go to Delano, which includes curb and gutter. So some of the challenges that we have in Muskegon Heights that is associated with the deterioration of our roads is the poor drainage. And that poor drainage is due to improper sloping of the roads, because the water should be pitched from the middle of the road to the side of the road, hit the curb. Once it hits the curb, it should be pitched towards the drain. And therefore, the water rolls off the center, hits the curb, and rolls into the drain and doesn't sit on the roads. When we have water that sits on the road, that water then seeps into the pavement, finds the cracks, and then you have that cycle again of freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing that destroys the road. Well, because we haven't done a full reconstruction, if you look at our roads, we haven't put in new curbs and gutters. And so that's what's contributed to deteriorating the roads over the year. So with the Delano project, we did complete curb and gutter. So that will allow us to then make the maximum use for the maximum amount of time for the road that we put in, because now we're pitching water properly. It's flowing to the curb and into the gutter and not sitting on the road. The other aspect that has affected us, other than the pitch and the curb and gutter, is the compilation of debris, whether that's leaves or dirt or trash, that then goes into our gutters, into our drains, and stops up the drain. And so as a result, you get puddling again. So puddling can be caused by the improper pitch and flow, but it can also be obviously caused by the drains being clogged. With the full reconstruction and the curb and gutter, we are pulling out drains, putting in new drains, using the newer technology in the drains to be able to have more flow and less cloggage in our drains. So another benefit. If you look at some of the road work in other communities surrounding us, you'll see they have made that investment into the curb and gutter. And if we want to create long-term situations, we need to look at continuing the effort to put in a full new curb line, resloping the roads, and making sure that we have proper drainage on the road. And obviously, that's the more expensive solution. It's the long-term solution, and that's what we talk about when we talk about $110 million solution for the roads in Muskegon Heights. It's quite expensive. People might ask the question, well, what about the road millage? And we certainly appreciate the fact that the community passed the initiative for the 4 mills as a road millage. And the idea was that that was going to help address the improvement of the roads. And I've said it on the show before, and so I apologize for those people who may have heard it multiple times, but the road millage gets us to about $360,000 a year on average for the last 3 years. And so $360,000 gets us about a block, maybe 2 blocks, depending on the condition of the road or the full reconstruct. The project that was on Delano is a $700,000 plus project. So you figure that is about a little less than half a mile. So you figure that over the 60 miles that we have in Muskegon Heights. And again, that gets us to that $110 million solution by rounding in that direction to address the costs of doing this type of construction. So that's what we're up against. And and like I said, I fully understand why people are angry and upset. And I know that their anger and dismay is focused on what hasn't happened in the last 30 years, and it's not focused on the people that are here now, because I guarantee you that the people that are here now are looking at ways to create solutions for a problem that we inherited that's 25, 30 years old. And so what are the solutions? We're going to continue using the 4 mills, road mills, and addressing as much as we can with those streets with the 4 mills. But understand that 4 mills is only going to continue to give us $360,000 because that 4 mills is based on property taxes. It's based on property values. And as I go back to over and over again, we have a community that was designed to operate off of 5,000 homes, 5,000 residences, and we currently have about 3,700 residences. And so there's 1,300 gaps in the necessary foundation to support our community. So as property values go up, that 4 mills is going to create more revenue. However, right now we're being outpaced by inflation as we build new homes. And we'll talk about that hopefully as part of the update. Then we start filling in those gaps in the 5,000 that we should have, that 1,300 that are missing. We start filling in those gaps, and that 4 mil goes from 360,000 to 400,000 to 700,000. And in that case, we are in a better position with that increased revenue to do more road. And so part of the solution is building new houses. Part of the solution is when we tear down a house, we are ready to with a solution to build a house in its place. And over the last 5 to 6 years, from what I'm told, we've torn down 400 to 600 homes in that period of time. And yes, it's good to get rid of blight. It reduces crime in that you eliminate an opportunity for people to congregate, to carry out nefarious activities in those locations. You eliminate the broken window and the eyesore, but what you leave behind is a vacant lot. And that vacant lot sometimes becomes a dumping zone because it's not occupied. We need to figure out ways to get those vacant lots occupied. And so that's why that push for housing is so critical to the renaissance of our community. Now, the property value's there. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We are the Midtown. We're 40 minutes from Grand Rapids. A house here for $250,000, for $180,000 is a house in Grand Rapids for 350,000 to 450,000. And so that is the way that we're going to position our community as the midtown between Grand Rapids, which is 40 minutes away, and the rediscovery of the Lakeshore. The gaze in Michigan is now being redirected away from Detroit, and we are rediscovering the jewel and gem associated with the Lakeshore. And we're in a prime position at Muskegon Heights to leverage that tremendous value associated with the fact that we are on the Lakeshore. We are on the Lakeshore with a community that is robust, that is resilient, that has a cultural fiber that you can't find anywhere else on the Lakeshore. And that is the value that we have, and we have to protect, jealously protect, as we enter into this renaissance. But the value is there. I had somebody tell me the other day that, the property isn't worth that. Well, if we keep thinking that the property isn't worth that, those people who know the value of our property will continue to snatch it up for pennies on the dollar. What we need to do is focus on redeveloping those properties. And some say we can't do that until we fix the roads. But I tell you what, because the property values have gone up 10%, 15%, and 20% in the last 3 years, respectively, the value is there despite the condition of the roads. And so folks in our community have to understand that, yes, the roads are a challenge, but the solution is understanding the value of what we have in our property, in our land. Because like my grandfather, who's a minister, used to say, God is not making any new land. And so it is a finite commodity, and it has value. And the sooner that we recognize that value and grasp it, the sooner we will be able to grasp that renaissance without changing the cultural fiber of our community. Because our community is rich, friendly people with so many assets and so much potential that we cannot risk losing that value and diluting that value. But we do need to understand the value of our land and build on it. And when we build on it, that's going to give us the revenue to be able to fix the roads. That's the long-term solution. Now, in the short term, here are some of the things that we're able to leverage given the limited resources that we have. Right now, we have our public works out patching roads. We have what's called asphalt kettles that allow us to take hot patch and patch the roads. Again, the deterioration of the investment in our community over the last few years has left us with 2 patch kettles that have limited operational capacity. They're broke down, they're beat up. And so what we've done under the new direction of Public Works is seek ways that we can upgrade those kettles. So we have a new kettle that we have leased in order to be able to get out there and maximize the work that is done. And we're going from 4-ton kettles to 6-ton kettles. We're going from 2-ton kettles that don't have a lift on them to 4-ton kettles and 6-ton kettles that have a lift that allow us to be more effective and more efficient in the way that we get the hot patch out. Now, again, this is still a Band-Aid on a bigger problem. But that Band-Aid allows us to get through the streets without the huge, massive potholes that we have. And those kettles are going full speed. And we have one that's still lackluster. We've one that's completely out of service. We're trying to get that one rebuilt. But in the meantime, we have a lease on one that is high capacity and allowing us to get much more done. And the plan is to get more of those kettles and to increase our workforce using seasonal employees to be able to address the massive amount of potholes that we have out there. I do thank the viewers that are out there and the citizens that have commented about Public Works and the work that they've done in hitting some of the potholes in the streets. There's so much more that we have to do. We understand that. But thank you for realizing and understanding the work that's being done and recognizing that so far and realizing what we're up against in terms of the challenge associated with this. So that is one of the steps that we're taking in the meantime. The other step that we've talked about is piggybacking off of water projects. And because of the state's commitment to clean water that has been much more pronounced over the last 3 to 5 years, there is state and federal money that is coming in to the local municipalities to address clean water. That means replacing water pipes. That means upgrading water filtration facilities. That means replacing lead service lines. And we were successful in getting approved for a $7 million funding to replace water lines. Now, I've announced that before. We got the approval in December of last year to move forward with that project. And some people are asking, well, why hasn't that happened yet? Why don't we see these water mains being replaced? We're in June already, and nothing has happened. Well, I apologize that we didn't do a better job of explaining it. Yes, we got approved for $7 million. Of that $7 million, $2 million of it is a loan that's funded through bonds. $5 million of it is through a debt forgiveness grant. So effectively a $5 million grant and a $2 million loan totaling $7 million. But the process, once we were approved for it, is a lengthy process. We got approved for it. We did an increase in our water service rates in order to meet the requirements to get approved for it. But after that approval, there's a ton of paperwork that now had to be filed with the state. The city's financials had to be approved subsequent to that to make sure that we qualify to meet all the necessary requirements to get the bonds that will ultimately pay for the loan and the grant. All of that is a 6-month process, and we are nearing the end of that 6-month process. But once the funding portion of that is in place, and that's going on as we speak, there's also the design work. So an engineer has to design the replacement of the pipes, and a good portion of that was already done. But once the design work is done by the engineering firm, then they have to take those documents, the design documents, and put them out for bid. We just put those out for bid last month, and on May 31st and June 1st, we got back from the contractors who bid it their bids and their bid results, and that's currently under review. Typically, the bid review process takes a week to 2 weeks to go through and make sure all the bids are valid, that all their paperwork is there, their bonds are there, their insurance is in place in order to validate those bids, look at the numbers to make sure that the numbers of those bids are correct, that the bids themselves, the documents were filled out correctly. And once that's done, that information is brought back to the city council to approve. So what you will see on Monday the 13th, which is our next council meeting, you will see in that meeting an introduction of those bid results. And that's just an introduction of it to allow council and the community to see what the bid results are. And then we'll come back 2 weeks after that for the actual approval by council of the award of the contract to the construction company that will do the pipe replacement. So this is not a process where we get approved in December and the money shows up in January and it's been sitting there. This is not this is what's called a reimbursement grant. Once we get all of our ducks in a row, which usually takes about 9 to 12 months, we're at the 6-month point at this. Once we get all of our ducks in a row and the contractor starts working, they bill us, we pay them, and then we send the receipt to the state, and the state reimburses us. So it's not that $7 million is sitting in an account somewhere doing nothing. This is a reimbursement grant, which is typically the way the state works. They will authorize us to use the money, but they will only pay it once we show proof that we've paid the contractor for the work that they approved under this project. So that's where we are with the pipe projects. What does that mean in terms of roads? Well, in this last bid letting, we had 5 contracts, I believe, that were put out for bid. Of those 5 contracts, 2 of them were pipe replacements on 7th Street and 6th Street in the Rotterdam, Amsterdam area. And then there was another contract to upgrade the communication system for our water meters so that we can have real-time information about the the water usage in the community, which is a huge upgrade that will allow us to be more efficient and effective in water billing and identifying water leaks so that we can capture those, catch those before they get to be $2,000 bills, that type of thing. That was one of the projects involved in this, as well as two projects for lead service line replacement, which is a mandate that the state put on cities, that we have to have all of them, all the lead service lines replaced in 20 years. With these two projects, we'll be 3, maybe even 4 years ahead of the curve in replacing water lines. I believe in these two water lead service line replacements, there's about 580 lead service lines that we slate will be replaced. Now, with all of this underground work, the reason why it's valuable to us in terms of roads, because at any time that we tear up the road to put in new pipe, included in that grant money, included in that funding that we got, is the replacement of a new road, full reconstruction, curb and gutter, exactly what I was talking about just a few minutes ago. So we are piggybacking off of those water projects to get stuff done, additional stuff done on our roads. Now, when is that going to actually kick off so that you can see it happening? We expect that the earliest that the lead service line replacement stuff will start will be in September. The earliest, probably more like October. And with that, that'll be digging up the road, portion of the road, putting in lines from the pipeline back to the house, and then coming back and repaving. So with the schedule that we're on, you can expect to see something as early as September, probably more likely October. Now, in terms of the Amsterdam, Rotterdam area on 6th and 7th Street, we're talking about probably in the spring because of the winter that we have here in Michigan. We can't do those types of projects through the winter. There's some things that we can do, but not likely anything that's impactful until the spring. So you need to expect in the spring of 2023 that the work will kick off as soon as we have a guaranteed thaw. And if this year has been any indication, probably not till after April. Hopefully we're at the end of winter and we won't get a snow in June. But in terms of your expectations to see those types of pipe projects and thus road projects, we're looking at the spring of 2023, which is using the money that we were awarded in December of 2021. And that's a typical timeline. With the supply issues that we have seen that result from COVID, the war in Ukraine, those types of things, supply lines are limited, and we're looking at anywhere to 36 up to 36 weeks to order the pipe in order to do these projects. That used to be more like 60 days, and now we're talking about 36 weeks. So that has to be factored in, and until that comes down, there's a long lead time from the day that we tell the contractor to go, that he's guaranteed to get paid, and he or she and the contractor then orders her pipe, and then we pay them for the pipe. That's usually 36. Right now, we're looking at 36 weeks. So just want everybody to understand, and have the correct expectations of what's going on with that. So again, that is a strategic way of addressing some of the road work. So we have the Band-Aid of patching, and we're trying to get more efficient and effective in patching. We have the long-term solution of building houses so that we can increase our revenues long-term. And then we have the strategic way of using engineering and water pipe replacement project, clean water projects to be able to fund the work that ultimately will allow us to rebuild and repave roads. So that's where we are right now. I don't like the idea some people have suggested about doing a special assessment, taking a block and saying, okay, it's going to cost us $800,000 to do these 3 to 4 blocks. So everybody on this block gets a bill that's put on their taxes to cover their portion of the cost of repaving that road. If we did something like that, granted, it would accelerate what we can do and the amount of work that we can do. But that could potentially push people out of properties that have been long-term residents and have paid their taxes and in diligent order. So that's a decision that is above my pay grade, but I have heard people talk about that. That's not a solution that I have seen have a positive impact in communities in the past. But it is a way to accelerate the process of addressing roads. So I'm pausing here to see if there's any questions that have come up about the roads, any questions that people are throwing. Hopefully, I'm not seeing any questions because I've covered it fairly thoroughly. But I know that there's always things that I might have missed that people might have questions and good questions. No question is a bad question, so I was taught. So I don't see any comments in the chat yet, so I think we're good. So just understanding that we have those multiple solutions that we're working through. Now, as much as I'd like to increase the amount out of the streets fund, we are hopeful that we don't have to explore that option because it's really a limited option because of the federal infrastructure bill. The details of that are still being worked out in terms of how we can access it from the city. But we do expect that there's going to be some funding that we can use for additional water projects and additional roads. What I'd hate to have to do is get money to do roads, pave new roads, and then get money for water, and then have to go back and dig up perfectly new roads to put in water main. So we want to sequence that so that we are hitting the water main and any other utilities that we want to put in, like potentially fiber optics, which is part of the infrastructure projects and infrastructure bill funding. We may be able to couple putting in water main with fiber optic cable to the house. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, to provide the best connectivity and address those two things at the same time that we're addressing roads. It is not today, it's not tomorrow, it is down the road. But what we have to do is be smart about how we position ourselves as a city and a community to make sure that we get our fair share of the funding associated with infrastructure to address the challenges that we have in our community. Other than that, there are not very many solutions that are available to us, except to try to find ways to hire more folks in DPW, to get better equipment and better facilities down there, so that we can be more effective and more efficient with the ladies and gentlemen that we have working in public works. So with that, then I think I will move on to talk about another topic which is kind of related, which is the American Rescue Plan. And so as many of you have heard, there was an award from the American Rescue Plan of approximately $11 million, just under $11 million. And so the thought that came from several people initially is, well, we can use that $11 million to do roads. Well, in the very first versions of it, it was indicated that the $11 million, the American Rescue Plan money, would not be something that would be accessible for that it had to be related to COVID and addressing the impacts or effects of COVID. They have since relaxed some of that. But again, even looking at the fact that we have a $110 million problem, $11 million is a drop in a bucket to address that. The communities throughout the state and actually the federal government encourages us to use that money as an investment in things that will generate new revenue to replace the money that we've expended using American Rescue Plan. And so housing, parks infrastructure, education, equipment, those types of things are typically the types of things that they encourage as expenditures under the American Rescue Plan. As of now, what the city has done, the mayor put together a citizens panel, focus group of citizens to provide some advice and input, suggestions, feedback on how the money should be spent, or recommendations on how the money should be spent, what type of projects, what type of criteria should be used to assess projects. And be mindful that we were awarded 11 million, and I believe the city was somewhere in the neighborhood of 47 million. Don't quote me on that. The county, I believe, was 33 million. So significantly more money than what we received. And so I would argue that our needs are greater. However, our population is smaller. Again, just a public service comment about the census. Um, that is why the census is so important for us to fill out, because we fell below 10,000 residents mark. And I guarantee you we have more than 10,000 residents in Muskegon Heights. However, if you don't fill out your census, you don't get counted. And if you don't get counted, then the city doesn't receive the revenue. If our census had reflected a higher number, when they calculated how much money was being doled out through the American Rescue Plan, we would have been in a position to receive more money. But our response rate in Muskegon Heights was about 62% on the census. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but just see how it connects into where we are now. That $11 million could have potentially been 13 or $15 million if we had 100% or at least 95% response rate on our census. So back on track here. The money that was allocated to the county thus far, from what I understand, the commission has decided to spend that money on internal projects that address issues that they're trying to address in the city of Muskegon. I would argue that the commission should consider projects outside of the city of Muskegon, because that funding was for the entire county. And I do understand that the issues that they're addressing are issues around county facilities. And so as such, it does serve the community at large, because we all go to the assessor's office or to the tax office, the county tax office, to pay taxes or file deeds. And so that does serve us, but the investment is still limited to the city of Muskegon. And so my challenge would be to throw out there to our leaders and our legislators that consider projects that are in the areas that need it the most. And I would throw out there, Mona Lake. I would throw out there the economic development potential of the downtown of the city of Muskegon Heights on Broadway. Those types of things are things that should be considered to overlap the funding that we received. So let's talk about where we are with the funding in the city of Muskegon Heights. So the council approved that we expend the $1.264 million for the fire department budget. So the fire department budget for 2021, ending December 31st, 2021, was at $1.264 million. That effectively helped address a huge gap in the budget that we have here in the city. So again, understand we have a system and infrastructure that's designed to address, to support 5,000 homes, but we only have 3,700 homes. So we are in a structural deficit, which means that year after year, we're going to continue to have more expenses that are critical expenses, that are not discretional expenses, than we have revenue, until we address ways to generate more revenue to build new houses or to renovate and get vacant houses back on the market. So that 1.264 million was an allowable expenditure from ARPA, from the American Rescue Plan, for the fire department, which if you did not know it, our fire department responds to more medical calls than they do fire calls. So that's over, I think it's estimated at 60% of our calls are medical calls. And as such, it is eligible for funding through the American Rescue Plan. So in addition to that, in our 2022 budget, council approved the usage of $335,000 as a replacement funding for revenues lost due to COVID. That originally was part of the initial rule that was put out in guidance for the American Rescue Plan, that you had to calculate what your losses were due to COVID, and from year to year, and then you could use a portion of that money to address those losses. They have since, in the final order, taken away that guidance and said that we can spend up to $10 million in of the $11 million to replace lost revenues. And so, as such, the council approved a deficit elimination plan. And let me back up and say this. We were required to do a deficit elimination plan because our previous audit in 2020 showed that we had a deficit, again, due to the 3,700 versus 5,000. That's the foundation for that. But because of that deficit that we had at the end of that year, 2020, we were required to put in place a deficit elimination plan. If we did not put in place a deficit elimination plan, then we would lose access to our portion of the state revenue share. So that deficit elimination plan was approved by council. And as part of that deficit elimination plan, we identified $2.8 million for 2022 and $2.89 million for 2023 to address the deficit the structural deficit that we have. The requirement of the deficit elimination plan is that we eliminate the deficit in 5 years, and we have to put a plan in place that shows that we're able to do that over a 5-year process, or we risk the possibility of going into receivership. So our deficit elimination plan allocated those two figures that you see on your screen for 2023 and 2022, which leaves us $3.36 million of unencumbered American Rescue Plan money. So what we need to look at, and what council will have the opportunity to address, is how to spend that $3.4 million. Now let's go back to the focus group that the mayor put together. So that focus group has been meeting over the last several months to put together, like I said, the criteria. The process that was put in place by the consultant, public services consultant, was to identify what our priorities were, to identify a criteria for assessing those priorities, put together those results, put out a survey to the community so that the community has an opportunity through the survey to give feedback, and then present the survey results to a public meeting where residents can come in and comment about the survey, comment about what they think are the ideal uses of the American Rescue Plan money. And then all of that information would be put together in a package by the consultant and presented to council, presented to the mayor and council, for the mayor and council to consider, for them to either approve or tweak or throw out and start from scratch. It is merely a recommendation. The ultimate decision for how to spend this money resides with the council. So where we are in that process now, the survey is out, and I wanted to give you the address so that you can go and fill out the survey. It is going to be available, if it's not already, on our website at muskegonheights.us/ARPA for American Rescue Plan Act. So again, that's Muskegon Heights spelled out .us/ARPA. So you can go out there in the near future and fill out that survey and give your feedback. The survey that was put together based on the feedback from the focus group that included members from across a good cross section of the community, and have your voice heard through the survey. And then in the latter part of June, you'll be able to come in if you'd like to, in person, face to face, and be able to have a conversation about and provide your feedback about the usage of the funds. And that will be part of the package that's presented to the mayor and council. So just pausing here after American Rescue Plan. Thank you, Jeanette, Burt Moore. Working together with the citizens means a lot. I can't agree. I can't agree more with that. Thank you for your comment about Lovett and Ms. Ross. It's a good idea for citizens to clean their streets drains to alleviate standing water. Can never do that enough. Get the leaves up, get your street line cleaned. Yes, we have a street sweeper program. That street sweeper program is about a $40,000 program, and we try to get as many streets as we can done for that $40,000. I'm glad that we were able to reinstate that program, but it is not enough. It requires all of us to chip in and do our best to keep the curb line clean. Let's see. Basically, the census of the city is like a count day for the schools. That was from LaDon Latin Cochran. Thank you for that. And from Beverly Hills, hands clap to say yes. So if there aren't any questions about the American Rescue Plan, that's where we are with that. Tune your sights on that $3.36 million and look for the survey and look for the opportunity to be able to provide your input in person if you so choose. So in the last few minutes that I have here, I want to do a quick update on some of the other areas. The third item on today's agenda. And that is, first, let's start with marijuana. So as you know, we have multiple, thank you. We have multiple licenses that are in the process of opening. The city allocated or awarded a total of 18 licenses altogether to 12 different entities. Some entities had multiple licenses, like a license to grow, a license to process, and a license to retail. Those are the three basic licenses that are available under the adult use state ordinance, state statute. And so there was a total of 18. 6 of those were retail, and the other 12 were a combination of grow, process, and consumption. So each of those licenses required an application fee of $5,000 apiece. We have done a renewal because those licenses were awarded in December 31st of 2020, were renewed in December 31st of 2021 for those that were open and for those that had not yet opened. Those that were not yet open were extended additional time due to some of the limitations associated with COVID and the lack of availability of contractors. So we expect, we have 2 of them that are open, one micro business on Sherman and the other, which is on Seaway Drive. Oh, wow, I'm drawing a blank on it, Norton. So those are the 2 that are open. Micro business is a small business typically under social equity, does not have to be, but typically under social equity, that allows you to have a grow, a process, and a retail in the same space, but you're limited to 150 plants to grow, process, and sell retail. We have that one open, and we have 1 full-scale retail open. And as a result of the 2 that were open, we received a check from the excise tax, the 10.6% that is charged as part of the sale of marijuana that goes to the state. They shared that out to us to the tune of $56,000. So as we open more, we hope that our share of that excise tax will increase. We get a share based on each license that's open. In the next 6 months, we hope that we will have the remaining retailers, grows, and processes that are open. So stay tuned for that, but they are currently underway. And so we look for them to come on board in terms of economic development for our community and the proceeds associated with their commitment to contribute to the community under the Marijuana Industry Voluntary Development Agreement. Voluntary Economic Development Agreement. which says that they commit to give back to the community. Cameras. We received a grant for $150,000 to install cameras. And we are going through the process with the vendors that responded to the request for quotations for the camera programs. And we are currently pushing out cameras throughout the community for blight control, dumping control, as well as for security purposes on our facilities. But this would allow us to do a more comprehensive program of cameras throughout the community to make sure that we're keeping our parks safe, that we're keeping our facilities secured, as well as addressing the issue of blight around dumping. And again, there's $1,000 reward if you have information that leads to the prosecution of anybody that's caught dumping. Next, I talked about the road repairs. We have completed the Delano project. We have on tap for this year the completion of Leahy, Reynolds, as part of that whole Leahy project. So we look forward to that going out to bid and getting the results for that, so that work can be underway. We have been successful in getting numerous grants. I talked to you about the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund, and that was the $7 million. We got the bid results back for that, and it looks like that's going to be a total of almost $10 million worth of work. And we're working through a strategic way to be able to spread that over the funding requirements of that over the remainder of this year and next year, based on the award that we got from the state. We also received $653,000 for the Drinking Water Asset Management Grant. That is an engineering grant to do an assessment of and review of our water assets. Part of that is the construction of the communication network to allow us to do real-time meter reading that I talked about earlier. We also had a $100,000 grant for the leak study. That is an engineering grant to go out through our system and identify places in our system where there are leaks so that we can address those and increase the efficiency and effectiveness of our water system and cut down on our water losses. That leak study is about 50% complete, so we expect the results of that to be here in the next 6 weeks. We also received an industrial park planning grant. That was from the EDA, the Economic Development Authority, for $79,000. And that is to do the design work around helping assessing our industrial parks on the east side and the west side, and creating a more comprehensive approach to marketing our industrial areas so that we can bring back large customers, industrial customers, to Muskegon Heights, to bring back those jobs that we've lost over the years through the migration of industry to other areas. The Downtown Redevelopment Design and Construction Grant from the USDA, we just recently received $95,000. That will allow us to do the design work and create construction documents for the redesign of our Broadway downtown area, as well as the Rowan Park area. As part of the Rowan Park area, we have received a commitment for $150,000 to install what we were calling the Band Together Band Together statue, which is an ode to and memorialization of the dynamic band that we have at Muskegon Heights, and the history of the drum majors that led the Heights Band into numerous local and national awards. And so that will be part of the redesign of Rowan Park. That was part of the vision plan that was approved by the DDA, which we got a grant for that from the Community Foundation and Muskegon Area First. And then also we just received notice that we received $100,000 for a first responder grant. If you saw the article in the paper, that grant will help us be able to begin to hire more folks from the local community so that we can afford to send people to the academy, as opposed to relying only on hiring people that are lateral, coming from other communities with their certification already in hand. This will allow us to send folks to the community, to the academy and pay the tab for the tuition, salary, and housing. So we're excited about that. So that's pretty much the rundown of the close to $15 million worth of grants that we have recently been awarded. So all these things take time to hit the ground running. But the last thing, since I'm running out of time, that I do want to talk about is the housing. So fortunately, we had the success in getting council to approve the sale of 29 lots to a developer that's looking to build new houses in Muskegon Heights. That is on the tail end of 13 lots that were approved for sale in the previous year. All of that is beginning to come together now. And we expect that we're going to have construction begin in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So we should be breaking ground on that with the first house built in Muskegon Heights since 2004. I know it's been a long time coming. I wish we could have gotten it approved on the first round back in 2020, and we would have been ahead of the curve of inflation and high materials costs, but it is what it is. And now we're on the precipice of those houses being built and a program that will allow us to transition people from renting into owning, so that we can embrace the renaissance of Muskegon Heights while maintaining the cultural fiber of our community. So I'm excited about that. That is right around the corner. And then we also have the project for which we received $1 million grant, the developer, Joe Rohn, on the corner of Peck and Sherman. Demolition on that is probably about 30 days away. So in the next month to 2 months, you should see all kinds of things happening in our community. And we're also still working on the project down at Mona Lake in order to get the pavilion up and running. So that's another project that is on the precipice of starting. So stay tuned, and you will see a lot of wonderful things coming down the pipe here in Muskegon Heights. So with that, I think I'm out of time. Let me just double check to make sure I haven't missed any comments. Again, thanks to I have a comment from Beverly Wells. Can we get a phone number as well? Can we call? Because there's a lot of elderly people that can't get out to these meetings or to do the survey. Yes, you can call City Hall at 231-733-8870, and we can assist you with that. In addition to the online survey, we'll have paper surveys available in public places like the library. So please reach out to us. That's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. Also, as I wrap up, I want to remind everybody we have several events planned for this year. The Guns program is doing a fishing derby this weekend. So come out to Mona Lake Park and bring your kids so they can be part of the fishing derby. Also, I want to remind everybody that Juneteenth is a week away, June 17th, 18th, and 19th down at Mona Lake Park. We've got a bevy of events and activities. We kick off the week on Friday with the phenomenal Rotary Mixer and beautiful, wonderful reggae band. He came out last year and did a bang out job. So he will be entertaining for us, Father Wayne, on Friday. We have a reception on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we have a treat for Father's Day. We have a prayer ceremony, as well as multiple bands that will be playing. We have some high profile speakers that we expect to join us. So stay tuned for that. Look out for that. And then we have the grand finale with our fireworks this year, expected to be put to music. So I'm excited about that. So with that, I will wrap up. Oh, I can't forget, in July, stay tuned for the Festival in the Park is back. And I'm excited to see that because the 2 years previous were canceled, and I haven't had a chance to enjoy the Festival in the Park experience. So I'm looking forward to that. So you've got Juneteenth, Festival in the Park, and then every Friday in August is the Friday Night Live Street Fest on Broadway. We're blocking off Broadway from Peck to Baker with food, music, and good times, followed up with the movies in the park in Rowan Park. And that is on the tail end of our farmers market, which is now open every Friday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I mean, that's a lot. packed in here. So thanks again for tuning in to Reaching New Heights with Troy Bell, the city manager, City of Muskegon Heights. So many things going on. So excited about everything that's about to happen, that is happening. And this is the spot to come where you get to know what you need to know, so you'll be in the know. 103.7 The Beat. Be blessed.